Hi, I'm Kelly Ballman with the Salvation Army Samaritan Center. We offer adult day services to people from the community. We help families take care of their loved ones and give a sense of purpose to the participants. I invite you to stop in or call to see what our program has to offer. We are located on West Hubert Avenue in Lancaster, and our phone number is 740-687-1921. Remember, the Samaritan Center changes how you live, not where you live.
Welcome to this edition of Lancaster Perspective. I'm Mike Miller, and my special guest today, the Mayor of the City of Lancaster, Brian Kuhn. How you doing, buddy?
Hey, Mike. I'm doing well. Thanks for having me on. I always enjoy coming, being on your show and sharing information about the city.
It's as you know, I retired from PRS from the county. Went to work for Salvation Army, and I have OU stuff all over my office.
Good for you.
Captain DeMichael he went to Ohio State, and so I was telling him, I said, I'm going to meet another Bobcat today.
Yeah.
And he just said, how many kids went to that school? So we have a nice friendly rivalry, but it's I always make fun of that school up north, I call it.
Yeah.
He gets a little upset, but
yeah, a lot of times we Bobcats, we kind of get overrun or forgotten about with the Buckeyes, and actually I've got my daughter. She's going to be a junior at Ohio University.
Yeah, that's right.
She's down on South Green and majoring in accounting and doing really well and enjoying the Bobcat experience.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
It's Katie's on her way there in August. She's going to start the master's program in Patton School of Secondary Education for counseling and behavioral counseling, and all those things are way above my head. So,
yeah.
But they're doing but that's the Harvard on the hockey.
That's right. It really is great to have universities like we have, whether it's the one up north you're talking about or Ohio University or any of them that's around the MAC schools. You can get a great education that's respected in the different fields. Yep. A couple hour drive away, my stepson, he started at University of Cincinnati last year, and he'll be a sophomore this year. And again, another great university,
Sure, yeah.
2 hour drive away. So it feels like we're blessed to have so many good universities around for the undergrad and the grad degrees as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's summertime in the city, and
it is summertime.
That means we're paving roads.
Yeah, right. And it seems like this year we got a little head start on some of the roads compared to last year. It seems like it was later summer or in the fall when we were doing those. But right now, Chestnut Street, as we speak, is being paved, and I'd be glad to share some other of those. Areas.
One question that people have when there's a schedule made, can you keep to that schedule? I know that weather changes it, and the plant's being open and shut, and do you try to keep as close as you can to the schedule for street repairs?
Yeah, I would say so, Mike. And a lot of that depends on our vendors, and just so the viewing audience knows, when it comes time to we'll say bid a project for our streets. Mm-hmm. Like pretty soon we're going to be working on 2017 paving schedule, so it's not something you do a month ahead of time. This 2016 paving schedule that we're working on now was actually developed pretty much this time last year, and then you put it out for bid is what we call it. So any interested companies like Shelley and Sands, Spires, Asplin, to name a few, they'll there's a certain day, it's called a bid opening, and so we sit around the table, and the service safety director will actually open the sealed bids. That's usually a package, and there somewhere in that package there'll be a grand total.
Right.
And so we basically pick the lowest bid from all the different vendors who submitted their bids, and it goes to the engineering department, and then they actually will go through the bid packet to make sure that what they say their bid is for the total project actually is for the total project, that they didn't leave a street out or something that like sidewalks, curb ramp, or handicap ramps, that type of thing left out. So that's like at the very early stages. But once that's picked out, the schedule somewhat depends on the vendor, and this year it happens to be a local company, Spires Paving. So it depends on their schedule, and also depends on what projects that we might have, like a gas department or a water department.
Right.
Maybe they're working on a street, and we're waiting for them to get finished before the paving starts. An example, last year on Wheeling Road there by St. Bernadette Church, there was a water line that went like for probably a mile, I think. I don't know exactly what it was, but about a mile. And once that was done, then the people that were paving came in. I think it was Shelley and Sands last year came in and paved. So we kind of have a schedule, and we try to stay away from like fair, Fair Week, opening days of school. A Lancaster Festival is good when we try to get in, get out, and then wait till that's over. Sometimes, I know they were working on sidewalks a couple of years ago, the safe routes to school, and it was over around Eastwood by Thomas Ewing. And if it's a state project, we have like kind of no control because it's state.
That was my next question, because at one time years ago, state dollars, federal dollars, earmarked, you can only use those for certain roads and those type of things.
Yeah.
Because some people think that, well, they woke up one day and said, let's do that street.
Yeah. No, that's a great question, and I'll give you an example. Ewing Street is like North Ewing and South Ewing, by the hospital. So that road, honestly, it's pretty much in disrepair.
Right.
And if there weren't such a thing as the grants or the state funding that you're talking about, we would have paved that probably a couple years ago, because it was in such bad repair, and the daily traffic on that is such a high rate. So we wanted to fix it.
Sure.
However, we knew that there's some funding out there available if we waited long enough. Like our funding bank will build up. Like the state's putting money in like credits into a bank for us for certain streets. And
Can those credits stay there forever, or they have
not
to use
forever.
them? Okay.
If you don't use them, they give them away to some other community.
Okay.
So a couple years ago, we were able to borrow credits from another community that they weren't going to use it, and it helped us. But then we kind of had to take a year off from using it for us, so we could pay them back. But for example, the Ewing Street, I believe it's called the STP, and I don't remember. Sorry, what STP stands for, but STP Street. So 95% of that's paid by revenue other than the cities. So, a couple years ago we passed that 3 mil levy, street levy. The voters passed it. Right. So that gives us like $2.3 million a year, and we use that money for our street program.
Right.
And this is going to last for 10 years. So what we want to do is use that money the best way possible. So if we know that there's a street that we're going to get 80% of the cost paid for, well, we'd rather wait a year or two and try to like Band-Aid it, so we're paying 20 cents on the dollar instead of the whole thing.
Sure. The priority when you sit down and say, okay, well, this street has 25,000 cars a week on it, and this street has 100 cars a week on it. I mean, it's got to become. I'm sure you're getting, why is my street being done?
Yeah.
How come my street's not? How come their street's always being done?
Yeah, sounds like you've been on city council before. That's a good question, and I'm glad you asked. It's a good question. So a couple years ago, when the street paving program was going to start, city council asked that we have a third-party consultant come in and analyze all of our streets. So the company that came in was EMH&T. So they literally had cameras, like GoPro cameras on their bumpers, both sides, and they drove our streets. And then that company rated the streets from like worst to best.
Right.
And then once we had that rating, the city employees, Lancaster Department of Transportation and the engineering, they have an idea what streets are good, what streets are bad. So they look at the worst of the worst, and do exactly what you suggested, Mike. They looked at what's called average daily traffic count. So if you're driving down the road and you go over those black rubber like hoses on the road, well, the city of Lancaster is probably tracking the daily traffic count. And
I got to tell you this. Somebody asked me, they didn't go to OU, they went to another school, and they said, well, I thought that tripped the light.
oh no.
I said, no, anyway, sorry, go ahead.
That's okay. So yeah, there's a certain time period that's left up there. You know, it's like a kind of a standard operating policy to get an average daily traffic count. So back to your point, if there's a road, say they're both equally as bad,
Right.
and there's one that 2,000 cars go by a day or 22,000, and there's another one, a street, that maybe 100 cars go by a day, then, you know, where do you want to spend your money? At $22,000 or excuse me, 22,000 cars or 100. So that's why you get the question. It's a fair one. Like my road is worse than this one, but that one got done first. And Fay Avenue is a good example over on the east side off of East Fair. It was like a disaster, to be honest with you. And we fixed it, I think last year, but yeah, it's like you don't go on that road unless you live there, kind of. And there was maybe like 20 people, and they pay their tax money too, just like everybody else. But we have to try to prioritize. We obviously can't do the whole city at once, and like that's probably not even possible because of the vendors that you would have to have. So as part of the bidding process. So now Chestnut Street is, as I mentioned, is getting paved. And it's funny, the terms you learn just by sitting in meetings. Of course, I was a service safety director for a couple years before this, so mill and fill, before, like, I would have known what mill and fill meant. So what that means is you basically go along a street and like shave off the top layer and then go put down another layer, a coat of asphalt, and then you stripe it and you're kind of done. There's some streets last year we did Independence Boulevard, and that's off of Rainbow Drive. We got into that, and we got into an area where there was like an underground spring that ran through, so we had to like rebuild the base of the road, because if we ignored it, in like 3 or 4 years, it just would have like sunk. So we wanted to do the right thing, and yeah, it cost more money, but if we didn't, we knew, again, 5 years down the road, it's going to be a problem for somebody else. So let's just fix it. Let's make it last 20 years. Pay an extra $15,000 or whatever it was, and go from there. So sometimes you run into unexpected situations. When they were doing Main Street up the hill, a couple years ago now, I think they ran into concrete and rail. I think the rail was from the trolley system that was there. So that's extra days digging out concrete that they hadn't anticipated. So more money too.
If a contractor runs into something like that, do they have to come in and say, we have a cost overrun and we need your approval to do this? Or is it automatically built into the bid today?
No, typically, like something out of the ordinary, they're going to come to you and say, well, we came into this. This is what we estimate it's going to cost. What do you want us to do? And they call it change orders. So if you're on the paying side, you don't like change orders, and whether that's construction, building construction, or streets, change orders aren't good.
What about brick streets? People talk about, well, why don't we just leave it brick? I mean, there are some brick streets that are open now.
There are. I think High Street, like I guess it would be the south side of High Street, and some other, maybe like Allen Street. Some of the other ones, there's some brick, and actually, it's a nice base, a nice foundation, and we haven't really had any issues. So, I can't think of any brick streets where we've had potholes to fill. For whatever reason, it just stands the test of time. So, if it's not broke, we're not going to fix that, because we've got obviously other streets that need it.
Is there on the website? Is there a schedule of what streets are going to be done, or is it printed someplace?
Yeah, if you go to, or you or the listeners, if they go to the City of Lancaster website, so if you just would type in the City of Lancaster, you'll get there. And so on our homepage, there's a menu, and you'll be able to find projects, and it'll be 2016 street program, and it'll list the streets that are scheduled for this year. And as I mentioned, Chestnut Street, currently they're being worked on. And Chestnut Street is from South Columbus Street to Broad, so not a big stretch, kind of like where the Eagle Gazette is or was.
And they're doing the intersection there too.
Yeah, I believe so. And Wheeling Street over where, for example, like Standing Stone Bank comes to mind, and that's from Memorial Drive to Cherry Street, so that's a long stretch.
Sure.
Those are kind of the ones downtown. Some other ones, Arlington Avenue, which is just a little shorter. I think that's off of Memorial Drive, and it goes up to State Route 158, shorter one. Hillcrest Drive, that's we're off of North Columbus Street and Shoreway.
Street,
So Forest Rose, that's one of the one I was really thrilled that we were able to. Forest Rose between Edgewood and 6th. That's really a highly traveled road, and I think it's because it's like a shortcut. You know, a lot of people use it as a shortcut or bypass. And that street needed fixed probably 2 or 3 years ago. And again, that was a case where there was going to be some, I think it was gas or water, I can't remember, which now there was going to be some work done. So, you know, we hate to cut into new pavement. So we said, okay, let's push this off. And I know recently I think there was a couple comments about cutting into newly paved streets. Like we don't like that, but there's times where we can't help it because like if there's a gas line break or water main or water line, you know, that we just can't help. We have to fix it. So therefore we have to cut into the pavement, but nobody likes to do that.
And I see the street crews out all the time. Tar and patch, I guess they call it. The guy walks behind the truck. There's 3 or 4 of them. They're filling the potholes. I mean, they're out there all the time doing that.
the potholes. And speaking of those, you know, obviously we don't have enough money in the city to have somebody drive around looking for that stuff. So if you know you're a citizen and there's a pothole on your road or on your way to work, you see it and say, I wish they would fix that. You could go to the website again, and there's a pothole report form. Or you could just call, like you could call the mayor's office, service safety director's office, or Lancaster Department of Transportation. Give us the address. We put it into like a work order system, and so it'll generate a work order and it'll get done. Sometimes it might be like the next day. Other times it might be like a few days, but they'll get to it.
It seems to me that it's pretty responsive because you've had I forget Mr. Hentz's first name.
Greg.
Greg Hentz that said it. I mean, I've talked to him a couple times, and they're very responsive to what, you know, we'll get to it and those things. So I mean, it's, you know, they've got schedules to keep too. So
and it's interesting you say that, Mike, because you know, city council members, they'll have residents call them and say, hey, you know, this needs to address. And
now, I want it fixed now.
Yeah, so they'll be the middleman, so to speak, and passing information along to us. We already have our schedule. Then we have residents call. So our list can be long, and I'm not making excuses, but they're long, and we have limited resources, limited money, limited time. So, you know, we try to take them as we can. And if there's something that's like could be a safety concern, then we'll go address that like immediately. And when you talked about people walking behind, like the example of filling potholes, that's one example. Another thing, like road maintenance, is they call it crack seal. So it's basically some guys walking behind a tank with like goo, you know, tar, and they're filling the cracks, because what happens to the cracks when it rains or snows in the wintertime, it gets in the cracks and then underneath the blacktop or asphalt, and then when it freezes and thaws, then that's where it just explodes, and boom, you've got a pothole. So that's just preventative maintenance that they're trying to do then.
I know there's a lot of stuff going on with the streets, but I wanted to, because it all kind of ties into economic development. I know, Mike Pettit's been worked with Mike for years and does a great job. And just touch base a little bit about economic development.
Yeah, sure, Mike. I'd be glad to. And that's a good point you bring up about the roadways. And I know during my campaign and now, I talk about infrastructure, and because you cannot mandate any company to come and land in Lancaster. You can't do it. The governor can't do it. Commissioners and the mayor can't say, I want you to come here. But what you can do is provide the ability, or I guess the resources that would welcome a company, and that's like the infrastructure, the roads, the utilities, gas, sewer, water, etc. So, we try to do that as far as having that done, and now like throw in fiber, the internet and that type of thing. So we try to provide that.
I think one of the great examples, forward thinking, is the new spec building.
Right.
That is out in the industrial park.
Yeah, that actually that wasn't built with city income tax money. That was it's called the Lancaster Port Authority, and that really I give all the credit to that to Mike Pettit. Mike would have people come looking for a building, like, hey, I need a building, and Mike would say,
a big building,
yeah,
not just a garage building.
Yeah, right. And Mike would say, we don't have any, so they just like cross us off the list and on to the next one. So now we have this building, brand new building. It's 50,000 square feet, and it's like ready to roll. It has utilities, everything in it, and that's looking forward, on Mike's part. And speaking of out that way, the industrial park.
Sure.
There's several. We call them like the Dysart buildings. That Dysart had like 6, I think, buildings out there, and over time they sold those off to SRI, which they moved all their operations from Canada to Lancaster, Ohio, which is great. And John Charles is wonderful, and Bob Muckensturm. They're just wow.
There's been quite a few out there. In addition to SRI, there's Phoenix is out there. Crown Cork and Seal is out. That's
U.S. Corrugated. Martin Partitions came from Carroll. And I can't say the name, but we have. There's another company, a manufacturer, that wanted to expand. They're within the county, but there wasn't room where they were, so they're moving to the industrial park. And I think now Mike anticipates maybe like 30 jobs, but they're like ready to ramp up and go. So we've got them coming in. There's some development on the east side that when it comes to economic development, it's tough. They don't want you to say names and everything, but I could just say on the east side of town, on the East Main Street area, that we have. There's going to be some positive growth there. I think there's going to be probably several million dollars invested in the community by a big box store, I guess. So I can leave it at that.
Yeah, sure. It's good news.
And there's one that I'm really excited about, Mike. It's and again, I have to watch what I say.
Sure. I completely understand.
But it's great for the city of Lancaster. This is a nationally known franchise. They're actually international, and they're expanding their concept, and they're working with us in Pickerington, like for this new concept, and we're thrilled. We're hoping that we're going to be the first, because it's going to get probably national news for certain, and maybe some international.
That's fantastic.
And they want us to be the first store of this new concept, and knowing that, I told we kind of have a team together that we pulled together, and I told our team more than once. I said, we're nothing against Pickerington, but I said we're not coming in second this time, okay? So we are focusing our efforts on getting this operation. So I talked with Mike Pettit. So on a weekly basis, our team, the City of Lancaster team, we do a conference call with. About said their name with their team, and their team is comprised of people throughout the United States. So they got architects, engineers, general contractors, whoever. So we conference call at 9 o'clock each Tuesday, and say, where are you? Where are we? What questions do you have? To help speed this process along and help us come out on top, because it's such a big deal for Lancaster. And the other day, Mike Pettit asked their team, how's this working for you? This weekly meeting, and and keep in mind they've probably done hundreds
Sure.
of stores
Right.
all over the country.
Mm-hmm.
And they said, by far, this is like the best organized and well-run project that they've worked on, and that
Doesn't
made me
surprise me.
that made me feel
Sure,
great because
yeah.
we took something we didn't want to lose. I mean, we don't want to lose any,
Right.
but I said, we're not losing this, and we formed that team and walking them through because that we have just so much to gain from this. I hope it works out for us, and we'll know probably in about a month. And then there'll be some PR, I think, that they're talking about already. So that's something, we got under our hat and looking forward to that. So the economic development, with the hospital, they're going to put in like $20-some million into a new facility, right, on 33 there. And the 2 new junior highs are going to be like $40 million. The new Kroger that we know about there on Kmart is probably millions of dollars. Gosh, it's just it's amazing.
A lot of stuff going on.
And the jail, they're on their second floor, and they'll finish out this year, and that was like a $30-some million project. So, and those are things we're just seeing like from now until the end of the year. That's going to continue.
We're almost out of time, but we appreciate you coming in, give us an update. One more time, if people have questions, website they can go to, just the city website?
Yeah, just go to the City of Lancaster website. And if they have any questions, when you go to the website, if you go to like the mayor's page, there's an email link to my address, and you could feel free to email me, and if I don't know the question or the answer to the question, I'll forward it on to somebody who does, no matter what it is, or call into our office. I met with residents on different things. When you compare like a smaller town, we have like 40-some thousand to like Columbus, like who probably it's going to be tough to get in and talk with Mayor Ginther.
Right.
But Mayor Kuhn, you can come in and we'll sit down and talk. So anytime.
Fantastic. Again, we appreciate you coming in, buddy, and good luck with everything.
Appreciate it.
We'll be in touch.
All right. Thanks, Mike.
Thanks for tuning in to this edition of Lancaster Perspective. I'm Mike Miller, and remember, until we meet again, let's make a difference.
In 1929 in Chicago, a gentleman by the name of Marion Wade, a former minor league baseball player, started the company. It was just a moth-proofing company then. In 1952, it expanded to carpet cleaning and pioneered what is now called outsourcing. And the Sidwells wanted a community that had a lot of churches, had a lot of soccer opportunities where kids love soccer, and a good Parks and Rec department, so they chose Lancaster. And so in 1980, they moved the franchise here in Lancaster to 6th Avenue. But then in 2002, Todd George, current owner, purchased the franchise from them. And in 2004, he bought a building that's on Mulberry Street, and that's where the franchise is located currently. I'm Jay Johnson, General Manager of Service Master Clean by Todd George, where we guarantee if it's not done right the first time, we'll do it again.
Service Master Clean by Todd George, 740-687-1077, 740-687-1077.